we have two options. Now, if you want to make that, if you want to write the definition of function outside of the class, it is allowed you, but we have to follow some. Yes, I'm sharing my screen. Yes. Okay, now it is visible, Shekhar.
Yes, miss.
Okay, okay. Due to some internet issue, I can't share my screen
Not yet.
perfectly.
Not
That's
yet.
why.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, right. So if I have one class ABC, right, and in that class I have some members, data members, and I have some member functions, right? So I can say I have one member function that is void get data inside the class, and I have one more that is put data function. Okay, in the same class. Okay, but while I'm running the code, okay, this is the blueprint, right? So now if I want to make integer main over here in this class, I must have to call that function, that is get data function and put data function. Okay, but the logic of that function I must have to write. Okay, so what I am doing, if I want, I can write this logic over here, that cout inside the class. Okay, but now I want to write this method outside of my class. Okay, I don't want to write this method definition inside the class, right? So I want to write down the body of my put data function outside of my class, right? So this is, you can say, definition inside the class. Okay, now over here, function definition outside of the class. Okay, but how can I write? So we have to follow them some syntaxes for this. Okay, so the syntaxes, you can say, is something like a return type, that is void, class name, that is ABC, scope resolution operator, and put data is the function name. Now here I can write the logic of my function, member function. Okay, over here. Now this is public, right? So I can do this. But if this is private, right? And if I want to call this function inside this function, can I do this? Yes. So our today's topic is nesting of member function. Okay. In one lab, I had already covered this topic, but don't worry. Just for that, students is the revision, and other students, this is the new. Okay. We had discussed this topic in the last lecture or not? Nesting of member function. We had discussed this topic in the last lecture. At least say yes or no over here in the chat. Nesting of member function. Okay, in lab I had covered. I know that. We had already gone through with this topic, but in class section, okay, no. Okay, so here is the small example of outside of the class function, and inside the class we have to design that member function. Okay, but now if I have this type of situation that I must have to call this put data function inside this class, inside this, sorry, method, right? So can I do this? Something like put data. Can I do this? Yes, you can do. But we have some rules and we have some types that using that you can do it. Okay. Now, if I'm do if I'm doing this kind of things in my program, that inside one member function I'm calling another member function, right? So this is known as nesting of member. This is known as the, you can say, nesting of member function. Okay, So if this is nesting of member function, then what is the rule or how can you use that over here in the class? Okay, so a member function of a class can be called only by an object of that class using the dot operator. Okay, we had already discussed that many things, that in integer main, if I want to call this get data function, I must have to create one object of that class, and using that object a dot get data, I can access this function. Okay, now however, there is an exception to this. Okay, this is known as the nesting of member function. Okay, a member function can be called using its name inside another member function of the same class. Okay, so if I want to call this put data function inside the get data, I can do this. Why? Because this is belongs from the same class, as well as this is also a member function of ABC class. Okay, so that's why I can do this. Using the object, I can also implement this many things, and using this nesting member function concept, I can do this, right? This is called a nesting of member functions. Okay, now here we have a small example of this. Okay, in this example, I'm taking two variables as a private, right? Because this is the default access specifier, that private integer m comma n. Now we have publicly three methods, that input, the data is void. Okay, void no argument. Integer largest is also one of the member function of my class set. Now outside of this class, what I am doing, I am writing the code of this function. Okay, so this is the method outside of class. You can write the definition of function. Okay, so integer set is the class name, scope resolution operator. I'm writing the code of largest function over here. Now, if my n is greater or equal to n, you have to return n value. Else, you have to return n. Okay, now the second function, this is void set input void. Now input is one more, you can say, the data member member function of my set class. Over here what they are doing, input the values of m and n, right? I am taking the inputs from the user, that is m and n. Okay, sorry for this typo, here I have n and semicolon. Okay, let me okay, and over here in the display function, what I am doing, I am taking or I am printing the value of largest function. What I'm doing, I'm calling this largest function. Now first of all, check, is my display method is belongs from the set class? Yes. Now second thing, check, is my largest function is belongs from the same class set? Yes. So in this display function, or in this display method, I can call this largest function. Okay, and outside of my class, okay, that is our integer main. And in this integer main, what I'm doing, I'm calling the function input. So input will call and it will take two values from the user. Now I'm calling the display function. Display, what is the work of this display function? It will call the largest function. So your compiler will jump out over here, and if the return is m or n, it will print it over here on the screen. Okay, so this is the work of my member function. Though my largest function is public, but if it is private also, I can do this same thing. Okay, now we have a private member function, that is read. Okay, so using this s1.read, I cannot call this read function, right? So what we can do, we can call this function using the public member function. Okay, so nesting of member function concept is you can use for the private member function as well as the public member function also. Okay, now we have the concept of static data members. Okay, before that, is there any doubt in this nesting of member function? Okay, now we have a static data members. Okay, yes, over here, make sure there's a read void read member function is private. Why? Because the default access specifier is private for the class. Okay, now we have a static data members. Okay, now what is static data members and what is static member function? First, we have static data members. So, a data members of a class can be qualified as a static, right? The properties of a static member variable are similar to that of a C static variable. In C language, we had already discussed the static variable. So, how it will run, what will be the output, we'll discuss. Okay. So, the certain special characteristics of a static member variable are given below. Right. So we have 2 to 3 major special characteristics which is for related with the static data members. So first one, it is initialized to 0 when the first object of its class is created. Okay. No other initialization is permitted inside the integer main. Okay, now only the one copy of that member is created for the entire class. Okay, so it will generate only one copy. Either I am calling from the one object, it will refer the same static data member. If I am creating one more object of that class, and if I'm calling the same data member, then the address of that data members is only one. Okay, so I am referring the same data member. For the third object, I'm referring the same data object. So it will not generate you the number of copies, but only one copy is generated for the entire program. Now it is visible only within the class, but its lifetime is the entire program. Okay, what the third point we're going to see is the visibility of that static data members is within this class. Okay, so in the same class, you can use it. Okay, using static variable. It works as a global variable. Static variables is same like a C concept static variable. That is, if I am writing something like static integer A, integer B. Is there anyone who wants to say? Yes, but just wait, let me complete first and then you can say yes. Here we had written over here that a data member of a class can be qualified as a static. Then the properties of a static member variable are similar to that of a C static variable. Okay, so the initialization is, you can say, with the 0. Okay, so the default value of my this A variable in this static case, it is 0. So now if I want to declare this A variable as a static, what I need to write over here? We must have to write the static keyword to make one variable or data member of a class to make it as a static for my entire program. Okay, how it will work, I have one example, so we will discuss. So till that, don't be very much in the hurry. Okay, so I'll explain now. The type and scope of each static member variable must be defined outside the class definition. Okay, what your first point will suggest, I'll explain. And this is the necessary because the static data members are stored separately rather than as a part of an object. Okay, since they are associated with the class itself rather than with any class object, right? So that's why we can call it as a class variable. Okay, first of all, I have, you can say for example, I have one static member variable that is known as integer a. Okay, and in that integer a, I'm making that variable as a state. Okay, now if I want to access this integer variable in my class, okay, so how can I use it? What I'm doing turn by turn. This static means it is initialized with 0. How it will initialized with 0? If I'll run this code, it will give me the output as a 0. So the value of my a variable is 0. If I'm calling this variable a with another value, then it will increment or decrement with new values. Okay. So till that the value is 0 for this static member variable. Now I'm writing this something like b is equals to a plus plus, okay, in one member function, and the member function is void get data function. And this void data get data function, what I'm doing, I'm writing something like this. So I'm incrementing the value of my a variable. Okay, how can we use this variable? Okay, we have one more method, but before that, if I want to call this variable or if I want to access this variable using this get data function, how can I? So as they were suggest over here that it is visible only within the class, okay, but the lifetime is entire the program. So in entire program I can use that static member function, okay, and over here, right? So the it is used outside of class, so it is knowing something like only one copy of that member is created for the entire class and is shared by all the objects of that class. So if I am taking the a variable as a 10 first time, right, so this 10 number is shared with every objects, okay, so this is only one copy is generated for your class, okay. Now over here they will define you the type and scope of each static member variable must be defined outside the class definition, right? So here I must have to declare something like integer is the return type of my static variable, abc class, the scope resolution operator, and the variable name. Then and only then it can give you the definition of your a variable, and then and only then it can allow you to use this static variable, right? So this point is suggest you that the type and a scope, okay, so outside of class I must have to give the type as well as the scope of my a variable must be defined outside the class definition. So this is the outside of class definition over here. I must have to write this sentence, otherwise my static variable will not perfectly work. Why? Because outside of my class they must have to be understood with this, that the return type of my static variable is integer as well as the scope is within this abc class. Okay, so what I'm trying to say you is, there any doubt? Okay, so if I will remove this line in the integer main, if I will call this get data function e dot, it will not perfectly work with this. Why? Because they don't know the value of a or what is a and what is the syntax of this a and the type of this static variable, okay. So we must have to give the definition of my a variable, static variable, outside of the class. Okay, why? Because we need to give the type of that variable, that is static, as well as we must have to give the scope of this a variable, that is, yes, within this abc I can use this static variable. Okay, now we have one example over here of the static member variable or static member data. Okay, now over here I have the initial value of count is equals to 0, right? Now the second I have private, that this is not static, right? My number variable is not static. Now publicly I am declaring two member function. First is get data, second one is get count. Okay, so first function, what it will do, it will increment the count variable's value every time with the 1. Okay, now the second function will do the printing of the my count variable. Okay, so what is the initial value of my count, what is the after incrementing with the count variable, I can see the output over here. Okay, and now outside of this class, what I'm doing, I'm making one a variable definition which is known as the static member variable is count, the return type is integer, as well as the scope that within this item class you can use your count. Okay, till now is there any doubt? It's mean, ma'am, we can only use static variable with resolution. By declaring a variable with the keyword static, what effect it done to variable? By default, this variables only one copy is generated for the entire class. Okay, only one copy is generated for the entire class. Okay, now for the entire class one copy is generated. That means first time if I am using that count variable, that means initialization is starting with the 0. Okay, so it will give you the 0 count every time. Okay, now if I'm making some changes, something like this, I'm incrementing the value of my count variable for one object, then second object, then third object, then your value is reflecting over there. Okay, otherwise not, right? So in this case, first what I'm doing, I'm making three objects for the same item class, A, B, and C. So A, B, and C. If I'm calling that get count function, this is the get count function. Okay, so what it will give you, it will print the output of count, right? So right now I'm not incrementing. Why? Because I'm not calling this get data function before get count. Okay, so the initial value of my count will print on the screen. Okay, okay, only one copy is generated, and this copy is shared among this A, B, and C object of my class. Okay, make sure it will generate you, it will generate only, you can say, the one copy of your count variable or a static variable, and it is shared among this A, B, and C. Okay, so I'm trying to say you is something like, if I have three objects A, B, and C for my class, okay, and I have one count variable for my class. Okay, so I'm trying to say you something like, I'm drawing it over here and you can understand it. Okay, just wait a minute. Okay, so if I'll put it in a comment section, it will not work. I'll show you. Okay, so if I'll run this, it will give me the output first 0. Why? Because this variable initial value is 0, 0, 0 in every case. Why? Because first, if one object is shared with this integer, the initial value 0. Second time, initial value 0. Third time, initial value 0. Okay, why? Because only one copy is generated. That's why. Okay, so here is the output. Okay, so what it will do, like first, okay, forget about this last 4 line. First refer this first 3 lines. So count is equals to 0. What it will give you, that I'm calling that a dot get data count from here integer me. So it is going to in this function. Okay, and if I'm going in this function, it will print me the value of count variable. So initially it is 0, 0, 0. For B, it is also 0. Why? Because it will share the same integer count variable over here. And in the third case, it will give you the 0. Why? The object is differ with each other, that A, B, and C, but only one count variable is refer in the A, B, C. That's why it is give you the 0, 0, 0. Now, what is the last three line is going to print you over here? Yes. So if we have three objects over here, object number 1, object number 2, and object number 3. Okay, so first object is for the A, second object for B, and third object name is C. Okay, now I have only one, you can say, variable name over here. In our case, our variable name is count. Okay, so the value of count is shared among the three variables same. Same value is referring, and in the third case also I'm referring the same value. Okay, so your common value is shared with your every object. This is your object, huh? And this is your static variable. Okay, understood what I'm trying to say in you is okay. Now let me first complete with this program and then I'll come up with your questions. Okay, and I'll try to solve your question. Okay, so over here now what I'm doing, I'm calling this function get data function. Okay, so get data function will come over here. It will first time increment your value with 1. Okay, then for the B, get data function for the object B. But right now, if I'm calling a dot get data, a dot get data, it will give you 1. Right, if from the 0, it will increment it with 1. Okay, directly I'm calling the function get data from the B object or using the B object. So it is referring the same count variable. So 1 will increment it with 1. So 1 plus 1 is equals to 2. So now it will give me the 2 output over here. Okay, so after reading the data, I'm not printing the count variable right now. I'm just incremented with 2 only. Okay, over here. Because if I want to print that count, I must have to call that count get count variable, sorry, function. So what I'm doing, I'm just incrementing that values using this different two objects. Though the two objects are different, A and B, but they must be refer the same variable. So that's why if now I am calling the get count function over here, that get count function, what is the work of get count? It will print the value of my count. Either I'm using A object or B object or C object. The value is referring count variable is same. So it will give you the 2 as an output. Yes. So this is for A, this is for B, and this is for C object. The value is 2 in every case. Okay. Ma'am, what is the use of int item count? Okay. Till now, this is the use if I will remove this line. First, let me put it in the comment section. Will it run or not? Let's see. No. What it will give you, it is undefined reference to item count. Okay, it cannot find out the reference of count, or if they don't know that what is this count and how can you use it. Okay, so for that they were mentioned over here that the type and scope of each static member variable must be defined outside the class definition. Okay, So if I will remove this line, it will not work. Here what I am doing, I am giving the type and scope of that static variable. Okay, so if I want to refer this static member variable, which is defined in the class, that's why I must have to define this many things. Okay, same like over here in the routine functions. Okay, in the routine functions, I am declaring that function if I outside of the class, then and only then it will work. So this is, you can say, the rule to define or design the you can say your static member variable in the out in the class. Okay, yes, yes, one more use is that, but this use is not you can say appropriate in your example, but still, if I'm referring something like 10, it will assign the value to your count variable, right? I cannot give this 10 over here in the class, right? So this is also one of the use of this count variable, that I am giving over here, I'm giving the value to my count variable. Now if I'll refer this count variable, it will give me the 10 value for the entire class. Okay, before assigning it is 0, but after assigning the value it is 10 right now. Okay, Tilaun, now am I clear with your point? Okay, I can give the definition of this count variable, or I am assigning the value to this count variable, okay, outside of the class. Inside of the class, I cannot do this. So this is also one use of your give the definition of that static member variable outside of the class. Okay, now we have a static data member example. We had already discussed the same example, right? In this example, they were taking the three objects over here in the class, that A, B, and C, which is referring the same get count, vary, sorry, your function. Okay, and it will print the initial value. So it will print the initial value as 000. Okay, now if I am calling the get data function, which is available in the class over here, right? So what it will give you, it will increment your count variable with 1 every time. So using the different object, if I'm calling the same method, it will increment your previous one data also. Okay, why? Because it is sharing the same variable. And after completion of this, after calling that get data function, I'm one more time I am calling the get count function, this get count function. So it will print the count variables value. Okay, so this is 3, 3, and 3. Okay, till now, is there any doubt? Okay, so whenever we have okay, so in case uh, okay, so the one use of your static variable in your compiler or in your program, that whenever you want to share the same variable with the every object, at that time you can use the static variable or static data member. Okay, yes, because it is either I'm using A object, B object, or C object, it will refer the same value or same variable every time, because I am not generating the duplicated copy of my static member variable over here in the class. That's why. Now, same like this, we have some characteristics. Okay, so our static function can have access to only other static members. functions as well as the variable declared in the same class. Okay, so using the static function name, I can use the that static members. Now, second characteristic, a static member function can be called using the class name. Okay, we'll discuss that a static member function in our example. So don't worry, here is the static member function example. Okay, so if I want to use that variables in my function, okay, so for the increment purpose, for the decrement purpose, and all those stuff. So for that, I must have to use static member function in my program. Okay, so you can say that static member variables same like this. We have static member functions also in our class, and we can use that properties of your static member functions and static data members using this static member function in the class. Okay, so here is the two characteristics of your static member variable and member function. Okay, now for that we have one more example. Okay, over here I have one more example with the static member function. Okay, now here I have one more static member function. Okay, so this is the example of static member variable. Now I have example of static member function. Okay, now why we use the static member function? Okay, so the static member function is you can say used to access or the static member variables in your function. Okay, so you can use that variables in the static member functions in the same class. Okay, outside of class it will not allow you to access. Okay, so if you want to access that member variables inside member static member function, it will allow you to do this many things. Okay, so say for example how it will use and how we can implement in our class. So for that I have one class ABC. Okay, in that private mode I have integer A, static integer B. Public I have and I have one more on data function in my class. Right, now I want to access this integer B in this member function. Okay, so for that I'm making that function as a static, and in that static member function I can use the variable or I can access this static integer B inside this. Okay, so same like your member variable, I can declare the static member function also in the same class. Okay, so for that we have to use static keyword either for the variable or for the function. Okay, now after completion of this we have some logic inside this function. Assume some logic over here. Some logic over here inside this function. Okay, now inside this function also I have some logic. Okay, now I have integer name, and in that name and taking the logic E and A dot get data. Here I'm making the skeleton, right? Then we'll discuss the data. Then B dot get data. Sorry, put data. Okay. Okay. Now can I access this static variable over here? No. Why? Because I didn't mention the definition of that variable. So for that, what I have to do, the return type, class name, scope resolution operator, variable name. Right now I can access this a variable. Why? Because this is static data member for my class. That's why. Okay. Now, if I want to call this function in the main, if I want to call this static function in the main, I can do this with the a dot count data using object, right? One more method we have. This method is known as using the class name. You can access this static member functions. Okay, so the class name is ABC, scope resolution operator, and count data. This is the second method to call your static member function. Right, call the static member function. Why? Because you can say that if I'm declaring some static member variable or member function, this is known as a class function or a class member variable. So if I'm assuming this is class member function, right, or you can say the class function of my ABC class, then I have to call this static method using the class name with scope resolution operator. Okay, I can do with the object also, but they will prefer you to use this method. Okay, whenever I'm following the static member function in my class, I am using this method only. Okay, we'll see the example. Till that, just write your number. Okay, this static member function. Okay, Arfat. Okay, write your enrollment number, then we will discuss. Okay, make sure that you are going to write the number perfectly in the perfect format. Okay, so what is static void count data? Okay, so same, we have a normal function, we have a static member function also. If I want to use this static variable, or if I want to access this static variable in the same class using this static function, I can access the static variable. Okay, using this static member function, I can access these static variables. Okay, so that's why we can declare the function as a static also, same like our static variable. Okay, we have a normal variable, we have normal function. Same like this, we have static member variable and we have static member function also in our code. Okay, so how can you implement these functions in your class? Why it is used over here in the class? Okay, Ali Sof, if you can hear me, then just write your number in a perfect format. Okay, Dipan, you cannot write the questions in a chat in your language. As I have mentioned earlier, otherwise I will not allow you to sit in the class. Okay, Alisa, thank you. Because using this chat, I can take your attendance. So if your number is in the short format and I'm searching your number with the full thing, okay, sometimes I missed your number. That's why. Okay. Don't leave the meet. As I have mentioned, that attendance is not the thing that you can leave the meet or you can leave the lab. Okay, Ashish, this is the concept of a template. Using that template, you can use this type name T1 comma type name T2 and your inline function and all those stuff, right? This is the template concept. We have this template concept in our syllabus also. Okay, this is generally used for generic programming while you want to uh, use some generic programming concept in your program. You can do it with the generic program. cin.pie. Where it is in my code. Did I mention anything in my code? Something like this. Okay. So first, let me conclude the session. Then I'll discuss with you. Okay. So the thing, we have a static variable and a member functions in our code. Okay, so in that we can define our whenever we have some requirements related with static, that this member variable should remain same either in either and I can use that variable in object 1, 2 and 3, right? The values of that variable is remain same in every object and for entire the code. Okay, so at that time I can use the static member variable function. And if I want to access that member variable function, we have one more another option that is known as static member function in the class. Okay, so using that concept, you can access that static variables in your class. Okay, so this is the thing we had discussed. Okay, we are remaining with the example of static function. Okay, we will discuss it in the next lecture. Okay, thank you, class. If you want to leave, you may leave. Okay, Ashish. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now, sir, where you want to use this concept, seeing dot something and zero.
No, ma'am. I was doing some of the programming question from the internet, and I was not able to
Okay.
solve it.
Okay.
So I downloaded one of the solution from of C++, and I found the code like this. So it is something different. I didn't understand. So I was asking.
Okay, okay. This is you can say you can use this zero something code. Yes, C in dot type zero, right? So you can use this type of code which is available in our you can say the standard library. So using that STD scope resolution operator C in dot and type. With the zero is you can say representation as a null, as well as for the some buffer concept you can use it with C in dot type. Okay, so buffer concept is you can clear your buffer, and if you want to clear some you can say the text or some characters in the buffer that I must have to delete the buffer values, and at that time you can use it with the program. Okay, so if your program is something related with this, so it may be refer kind of the concept.
Ma'am, shall I present my that code and can you explain that?
Right now we have 12:30. So can you please share your code in the mail?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.